Is war a good way to make a lot of money and place individuals in important positions? The answer is yes, it is. Few other important questions to ask are: who funded whom? Did companies give donations to politicians in exchange for defense contracts? Who profited from the war? I guarantee you will get the answers of all of these questions by the end of this video. Many media reports suggested that the Afghan war was a victory for the Taliban as well as the military-industrial complex. For Big War's balance sheet, the war in Afghanistan indicated important potential gains. So what's military-industrial complex? A network of individuals and institutes involved in the manufacturing, buying and selling of weapons and military technology is referred as military-industrial complex. The military-industrial complex in a country usually tries to generate political support for the national government's continuing and increased military spending. A driving force behind this relationship between the government and defense manufacturing companies is that both sides benefit. One side from obtaining war weapons and the other being paid to supply them. That means they are making money from war. On January 17, 1961, US President Eisenhower warned everyone about the threat of the military-industrial complex. In 2021, 60 years later, this threat appears to be very strong and dangerous. Three groups who strongly benefit from keeping countries at war are defense equipment manufacturing companies, the politicians, and the Department of Defense bureaucracy. And in 1961, Eisenhower said, "We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties and democratic process." Between 2012 and 2014, there were a lot of media reports like this: Congress again buys Abrams tanks, the army doesn't want it. Or this: army says thanks, but no tanks. Military-industrial complex tends to promote policies that might not be in the country's best interest, such as participating in nuclear arms race and going on long wars. And the growing influence of this nexus, if left unchecked, could undermine democracies. And don't get me wrong, the military-industrial complex is not exclusive to United States. It can be traced everywhere, from Brazil to South Africa to Pakistan. Withdrawing from Afghanistan triggers a flurry of finger-pointing about how the war was lost and how the US has been humiliated. The entire 20-year saga was a success for those who built the circus. And by circus, we mean the military equipment. Harvard public policy professor Linda told Marketplace the whole system was set up in a way to enable contractors to rip off the government. And this was all in the light of the war in Afghanistan. Christian Fair of the Foreign Policy observed the confusing corruption by the US corporations and individuals operating in Afghanistan, in which Afghans were straight up robbed in many cases. Since the start of the conflict in Afghanistan, the military-industrial complex has been winning, and many firms have been cashing large checks from Pentagon's $1 trillion war budget for years. A significant portion for the almost $4 to $5 trillion spent on the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq has gone to military contractors. Lockheed Martin, Dane Corp, Black & Veatch, Academy, and the oil companies that ship the fuel on which the army runs are just some of the most profitable. Over 250,000 Afghans have died due to the Afghan war, and the companies just want to make a profit, and politicians want to fund their political campaign from donations by these companies. Earlier this year, a study group established by the Congress recommended that President Joe Biden extends the May 1 deadline for withdrawing troops from America's longest war. Don't get it twisted, the group has far too much political influence, but this group is supposed to be neutral and make recommendations that are in the best interest of the country, right? Well, then think again. 2 of the group's 3 co-chairs, 9 of the group's 12 members have current or recent financial ties with major defense contractors. Let me give you some examples. Kelly Ayotte is the key member in this group, but since 2017, Ayotte has served on the board of BAE Systems. Let me give you another example with some financials. Margaret O'Shauville, who served as the National Deputy Security Advisor for Iraq and Afghanistan from 2005 to 2007, also serves on the board of Raytheon, which has a $145 million contract to train Afghan Air Force. He received $940,000 US in cash and stocks from defense contractors between 2017 to 2019. In legal terms, this is called conflict of interest, and people get sued because of this. And all of this gives birth to revolving doors. It refers to the movement of high-level employees between the public sector job and the private sector jobs, and vice versa. People often go where they make the most amount of money, or they have the greatest amount of influence, suggesting that the government should do what is best for them rather than what is best for the country. Policies that are supposed to prevent or limit the revolving door practice aren't effective. For example, former government officials who make decisions on contractors must either wait a year to take a job with a military contractor or move to a role or unit with no connections to the government work. However, this rule doesn't apply to policymakers who may join corporations and company boards immediately. And as you can see, the 1 year time is very short, and this rule is not that effective and strict at all. Particularly in the Afghanistan scenario, this military-industrial complex not just benefited the companies or the politicians of the US, it benefited the warlords and the politicians of Afghanistan as well. In the end, the war was a massive financial operation with unimaginable cost in terms of government funds and human life. The fact that Afghanistan is now again under Taliban simply adds to it. These are just a few examples where the taxpayer money was going. A soldier of the US Joint Command, which oversaw Afghan army training, said, "I don't think I could overstate that this was a system just basically designed for fueling money and wasting or losing equipment." Furthermore, in 2019, the Washington Post published an outstanding piece of journalism titled "At War with the Truth," in which they obtained leaked military documents referred to as the Afghanistan Papers, which revealed that the US officials had intentionally lied and falsified reports about the progress of the $1 trillion war in Afghanistan for years. The latest leaked Joe Biden call with Ashraf Ghani further contributes to it, and the companies are willing to spend money to get defense contracts. It is a kind of a marketing budget. Fluor is a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and it has been working with the US government in Afghanistan for years. And every year, Fluor spends millions of dollars pushing for defense contracts. Louis Vuitton and ExxonMobil have made billions of dollars during the Iraq war as well. The lovely relationship between Louis Vuitton and Dick Cheney was that he was the CEO of Louis Vuitton and left to become the Vice President of the United States, but he still had a large share in the company. So the longer the Iraq war goes on, the more money Dick Cheney and his company makes. The goals and the interests of many actors participating in the military-industrial complex are very well aligned, and the connections are mutually benefited. Some critics have called this an iron triangle between the government officials, legislators, and the military-industrial businesses. For example, legislators who receive campaign contributions from military firms may vote to award funding to projects in which the firms are involved, and military firms may hire former defense ministry officials as lobbyists. The military-industrial complex in most economically advanced companies tends to have several characteristics. A high-tech industrial sector with its own legal, organizational, and financial norms. Competent people who switch between administration and production, and centrally planned controls on output, quantity, and quality of weaponry. The commercial dynamics in the military-industrial complex are also very favorable for large corporations because of lack of competition. Only a handful of players operate, and also because the budgeting process is highly political, the weapon system purchased by national governments are very costly and overpriced. The pressure for large military budget exerted by military-industrial complex can result in depletion of a country's non-military industries like agriculture or education. This book explains the military-industrial complex in detail. You can read it. In 2020, worldwide military spending reached $1,981 billion. The global military budget continues to climb year after year, as does the military-industrial complex. Additionally, the cost of war is measured not just in dollars, but also in the lives of soldiers and civilians lost along the way. Therefore, these corporations must have a moral compass and not seek to make a profit out of blood.